Hello and welcome to another event from Big Astronomy. Big Astronomy is a National Science Foundation funded project which includes many elements. It includes a planetarium show that was created in both English and Spanish that helps our viewers understand the many people with diverse skills and backgrounds from around the world that it takes to make big astronomy and big science happen. It also includes educational activities and kits that were created by the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and we have Vivian White with us here today from the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. It includes these ongoing live event series that you can find out more information about on our web portal, bigastronomy.org. And the program includes educational research that's being done by the University of Michigan, by Michigan State University. And we have Dr. Jessica Trucks here with us today, who's going to be telling us more about the research and how you can contribute at the end of the program. But today we are all here to talk about how we can make astronomy education more accessible. And I am grateful to have with me our guest speakers on this panel discussion today. We have Quinn with us here. Ken is the lead Tactile Graphics Evaluator for Haptically Speaking. And many folks in the planetarium community are probably familiar with Ken because he is a consultant for accessibility for many science-related projects. We also have with us today Noreen Grice of You Can Do Astronomy, who also is well known for her work in making astronomy education more accessible to all. And as I said, Vivian White, who is the Director of Free Choice Learning for NASA's Night Sky Network and the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. So to get started with our conversation today, I thought I'd first just ask if Ken and Noreen, and you too, Vivian, if you could let us know a little bit about your work that you do to make astronomy education more accessible, some of the examples of the type of work that you have done. And Ken, maybe you can start us off.
Sure, I got into it because I myself am totally blind, have always been involved in science and really interested into it. And besides being involved in science, I also have an educational background. And when I went to go get my certificate, had to do a secondary science course. And at the time there was none accessible, and got into the world of evaluating science and tactile astronomy. And that kind of has brought me into a world that I've learned to love and enjoy and can't live without.
Well, thank you, Ken, and thank you for all the work you've done. I know that it's benefited many in our community. And Noreen, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in this area?
Well, I've been working on accessible astronomy strategies since 1984, which seems like a long time ago, but isn't. Well, maybe it is, I don't know. When a group of blind students came to one of my planetarium programs, and that really opened my eyes to how inaccessible astronomy in the planetarium was. So over the years, I've written some tactile and accessible astronomy books. My most recent one is Touch the Stars 5th edition. And also over the years, I've worked with NASA on exhibit graphic design. And I've made educational workshops to try to reduce the barriers to learning in astronomy.
Thank you, Noreen. And Vivian, I know that the work you do is many working with less diverse audiences, but I know that you also have had experiences in this area. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I am just thrilled that you all are here today, and I've been working trying to make the night sky more accessible to everyone for about 15 years at the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and I learn every day from experts like you. So I'm just here to ask questions of you, and hopefully they're questions that other people on the call want to hear as well. You're welcome to put questions in the chat if you have others as well.
Yes, thank you for Vivian. I was just about to say that. I missed that in my introduction. So if you have any questions while you are here today, either if you're watching live on Facebook or if you're here in the Zoom webinar. Please leave your questions in the chat, and you can do that. Make sure you've selected to have the question, your comment go to everyone, not just panelists and attendees. And we'll get to those as we can, so feel free to leave those questions anytime. Also, if you'd like to hear this program in Spanish, we do have simultaneous Spanish interpretation available, and you can just click on the interpretation widget at the bottom of your Zoom window. You do have to join us in Zoom, so you can find that link if you're watching on Facebook. But click on the interpretation there and you'll be able to hear the program in Spanish. So I know, Vivian, you had some questions for us to sort of start us off with this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. I have loved working with Noreen for more than a decade, and Ken and I have just gotten to know each other in the past year, and I have learned a ton from both of you. And something that I would like to know is, what do you wish people knew, like educators and museum staff, what do you wish they better understood about working with the blind and visually impaired communities when they're doing astronomy outreach and education? Maybe I'll start with Ken.
Thanks, Vivian. I guess what I'd like them to think about is that all visual impairment and blindness, and the students and the people that have visual impairment and blindness who come into their planetarium or museum are not the same. They all have different experiences and different ways of learning. And so if you take that into aspect from the beginning, when you create your show for a planetarium or a feature exhibit, you'll be better off. And if you use the universal design for learning tools, that would be a good way to start at.
Those are amazing. Yeah, Ken has a lot of great resources on the universal design learning. And I think we'll get into some of that today, hopefully. Noreen, is there anything you wish educators knew?
Well, people who are blind or visually impaired are just regular people who are blind or visually impaired, and people have their own different adaptations to learning. But I think overall, being able to speak pictorially about an image or emotion can really help someone better understand a concept or paint a picture in their mind's eye. So I think that's something important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of follow up behind that, if you know ahead of time, it's easier. But even when you're thinking about, okay, if I can't see this, how would I describe it verbally?
I wonder if one of you would feel comfortable giving an example of how to describe, say, the Milky Way galaxy in a pictorial way. What would you do if you were going to try to do that for an audience?
Okay, so you might say the Milky Way is a spiral shape. Maybe think of a pizza tray, but think of spiral arms cut out. It's a bit thicker in the center and it tapers off to the side. And along the spiral are arms made with, contains a lot of stars. And within that is our solar system and our sun and all the planets we know of.
Yeah, that's a really good description. I'd say on top of that, the stars are different brightnesses. Mm-hmm. So if this pizza pan had different textures, you would feel different heights of the texture depending on the brightness of those stars.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Along those lines, have you all seen an exhibition or a planetarium show that was really impressive, that's really got a lot of the things right for blind and visually impaired visitors?
Should I go first this time?
Yeah, you can go first, Noreen.
Okay. Well, I really think that live planetarium programs offer a very unique opportunity because the presenter can tailor the program and description to meet the needs of the audience. So, as another example, instead of just saying, over there's the Big Dipper, you might say, and to the north, we see the Big Dipper. It's a pattern of 7 stars that roughly outlines the shape of a spoon. 4 stars make the spoon part where the ice cream goes, and 3 stars make the curved handle of the spoon. And now you have a picture in your mind's eye of what that looks like.
Right, yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of that, I think it's important to kind of do some orientation for the whole audience in the beginning. Where's north in your room? Where's south? Because depending on how your planetarium's set up will determine that. But yeah, live programming is great. Gives you a lot of options because you can tailor it particular to your audience, where if you use a lot of video and animation, it becomes a lot more difficult because you have to have that built in.
Mm-hmm. Great. Are there any that you've seen, any exhibits or something that you've seen that have done that really well?
I've been to a lot of presentations that have done that well in the planetarium, as far as a big scale where it would have actual pieces out on display and everything like that. The only place that comes to mind automatically would be the Ben Franklin Museum in Philadelphia. They're a fully hands-on museum.
Yeah, I also have experience of going to the National Air and Space Museum, although I haven't been there in a few years. I remember going into the planetarium, and they have translations for different languages. Just put on a headset, and it's accessible to you. And I believe they also had audio description. And I know in a lot of IMAX theaters, that's available, and that's really good because it's extra narration put into the pauses of the program. And even if you're not visually impaired, if you put the headset on and listen to that, guaranteed you'll find some things that you weren't even aware of, you weren't even paying attention to. So it helps everybody.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. They've actually done studies on that case, Noreen, and they found that the visual learner picks up so much that they didn't grasp when they've watched it previously, just without the audio description.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that fits really nicely into that universal design learning that Ken was talking about earlier, about how having things made more accessible actually helps everyone, not just those that it's specifically designed to assist. Ken, did you want to talk any more about that? Because I know you have a lot of great resources.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of piggybacking on that is the fact that if you're starting up new or doing any renovations to your building, think about the universal design for learning aspect, not necessarily just for your presentations, but also for the design of your space. So, I mean, a lot of our planetariums and museums, just because of their age, are not accessible to all abilities because of the way they're set up. So if you have somebody who's in a wheelchair that comes into your planetarium, they might only be able to sit in the back or in the front right corner. Whereas if you are making modifications to your building and your planetarium, you can make it as movable chairs, and then they could sit anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And another thing to think about is when you're making something accessible to one group of people, it becomes accessible to another. I mean, one of the common things are the curb cuts. Curb cuts were designed for people in wheelchairs, but of course, everybody's using them, especially people with baby strollers. And one thing I learned, just an experience I had, was using captioning systems. Captioning systems, display the captions for people who are deaf or hearing impaired. However, people who speak English as a second language have also requested captioning because they've said it is easier to read the words than to listen when learning English. So suddenly it's serving many populations.
So for somebody who might be already in a building, maybe they're in, say, a school district planetarium as an example, that frequently those planetariums are, have a very limited staff and limited budget. They might not be able to make big changes to their setup to become more accessible to differently abled peoples. But what are some things that anyone can do? I know one example we've talked about is using pictorial language when you're describing what people might see in the night sky. But can you give some other examples of things that any presenter can do to be more accessible in their teaching of astronomy?
Sure. I mean, some of the stuff with regards to the audio description and the closed captioning, there's a lot of stuff that's already out there for free or for low cost through the Described and Captioned Media project. And I know they do a lot with school districts, and they have already a lot of science stuff already closed captioned and described. So that would be a good part there. And obviously, if you're in a school setting, you're kind of limited to your movement, so you're kind of set. So with regards to movement within your planetarium, you're just going to make the best out of your situation and try to accommodate, the person or the student the best way that you can. But there's always other things that you could use. You could have, picture communication cards where they're closer to the person so they can see them better, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would suggest for there's a free app on Google called Google Live Transcribe. So if somebody has an Android phone or a tablet and Wi-Fi, you can download this, and as you're speaking, the words are scrolling across. So you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on a captioning system if maybe you could get by with something you already have and just download this free app. The other thing is, at a school, there's generally a lot of hands-on materials. So being able to have models around, maybe you've got a model of a capsule, you could put two balls together and say, this is how big the Earth is compared to this is how big the moon would be. And so to take what you have and then sort of repurpose it into the activities you need.
Yeah, and then that helps all the other students relate it too. There's a particular thing that I'm thinking about that a professor of mine in the past has done, where he takes a whole group of students and spaces them out accordingly to the size of the space that he has for the spacing between the sun and all the planets. And so then you get an auditory version of where's Pluto compared to where's the sun at, where you also get a tactile, because you're physically moving throughout the room. So there's so many things you can do within a schoolroom. You're kind of limitless to what you can do.
That's great. So I know a lot of our visitors are wondering how to attract more blind and visually impaired community members to the planetariums. Is there a way to reach out that you can share that could help make it help us to reach out to this community? Especially there's some amateur astronomers, I think, viewing that would love to share the night sky with people who might not show up at their programs otherwise.
I'd say the best thing would be to reach out to the two biggest consumer groups for the blind and visually impaired in the United States. And a lot of other countries have versions of them called the National Federation of the Blind and the American Council for the Blind. In the United States, mostly every single state has a state affiliate as well as normally local affiliates, and they'd be more than willing to talk to you and come to a presentation, and they'd be even willing to talk to you ahead of time and say, hey, what are you doing? Okay, here's some ideas how we think it would work better for us, if those individuals had those type of questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I would add to that is, don't be afraid to talk to people with a disability. Be proactive, have materials and strategies that are inclusive so that you are planning to reduce or hopefully eliminate barriers. Bring in an accessibility consultant and bring in a focus group of people who are local blind and visually impaired members of the community and make them an active part of the program. So they're really giving a lot of feedback and helping you.
And if you're taking down those barriers to the blind and visually impaired, when you do it for a bigger setting, hey, you might have somebody that's there that's blind or visually impaired, or you might not, but then those barriers will be broken down for the whole group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. Ken, you said the National Federation for the Blind, and what was the other group that you mentioned?
American Council for the Blind.
Okay, I'm just going to put the links in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, Vivian.
Well, I know that one of the things we wanted to share today was that Noreen has taken a look at some of the activities that Vivian and members of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific put together for the Big Astronomy program, and specifically use these as an example for showing how you can adapt activities, either the ones that we've created for this program or any activity that you might find that you maybe used to teaching already, but ways that you can make them more accessible to a larger audience. So Noreen, maybe you can share with us some of those adaptations you designed.
That sounds great. Let me bring that up here, and I will share the screen here. Okay, can you see my slides?
We can, but it looks like you need to click that present button.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Present to a meeting. Oh.
Try the one next to it. Nope, other direction.
Oh, there it is. It was hiding. Okay, gotcha. How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
Yay! All right. So I've created some modifications for the Big Astronomy Outreach Toolkit activities. And these are great activities. There's a lot of things to learn. So let's begin with some of the activities. And the first one I'd like to talk about is called Visualize Our Galaxy. Now, in the toolkit, there is an umbrella with an artist rendering of the Milky Way galaxy. But also on the notes for the presenter under materials and sources, there is a line that says additional umbrellas are available, or print your own poster from bit.ly/Big Astro. So that's the poster we want to print out. You want to print out an 11 by 17 inch copy of that. And we can make two different kind of models. First of all, so this is the artist rendering that you will print out. You'll notice there's a small circle on a spiral arm, and the circle represents the most distant stars that are visible to the unaided eye from Earth. And in the center of the circle would be the approximate location of the solar system. So first, let's make a tactile foam galaxy. So what you need are a sheet of felt that has an adhesive backing, a sheet of smooth foam paper that has an adhesive backing, a sheet of glitter foam paper that has an adhesive backing, pair of scissors, 2 round adhesive foam stickers. Oh, I've got scissors twice, that's okay. And 1 brass fastener if you can. So what you're going to do is to cut out, trace an outline of the galaxy and cut it out into the glitter foam sticker and attach that to the felt background. And attach the felt background to something stiff like a piece of cardboard or a piece of foam core. Then you want to use the smooth foam and cut out the barred center of the Milky Way galaxy and place that on top of the glitter foam piece. And you want to finally make the round circle to correspond with the circle on the picture. You want to put that on the spiral arm of the glitter foam, and then either another smaller circle or a brass fastener and push that right through. And your final product will look like this. Now, what's great is the glitter foam has a scratchy texture, and the center of the galaxy will be smooth, and so will that circle where the naked eye view is of the closest stars. And then the brass fastener is right in the center, and that is tactile. So the whole thing has different textures, and the felt, of course, has kind of a furry background, so that will feel different. So that's option one, a way to make the tactile galaxy. The other is to make an 11 by 17 inch laminated copy of the picture. And instead of using the glitter foam, we're going to use glitter fabric paint. It's very inexpensive, like 99 cents a container, very inexpensive. And so what you want to do is to trace out the spiral arms with the glitter fabric paint. And then you want to use the slick, which will be dry smooth fabric paint for the barred center of the galaxy. And then you'll have 1 foam sticker, exactly what you did on the last model, placing that foam sticker over the circle, and then put your brass fastener in the center. And now you have a second version of the tactile laminated galaxy. Now, very important for this one, wait 24 hours for the fabric paint to dry. Otherwise, you will have fingerprints of your fabric paint, and that's probably not what you want to do. Now, the next thing is the clues to the cosmos. Now, in this activity, in the description, bring up the, oh, let's see. My slides have set, oh, there we go. Oh, I jumped ahead. Wait a minute. Well, jumping ahead. In the description is a picture of supernova 1987A. That's a picture we want to print out, and you can find that picture on hubblesite.org. So this picture has a multi-wavelength view of supernova 1987A at the top part of the picture, and then below it, we have a small version of ALMA, Hubble, and Chandra. So for the supplies for this activity, what you want to do is to print out an 11 by 17 inch copy of supernova 1987A, and you're going to need about 10 inches of sewing batting, which is kind of like quilt batting material. And you need a bag of beads, floral wire or string, and inexpensive foam shelf liner that feels kind of rubbery. That's the kind of thing you put on a shelf so a cup or plate doesn't move. So what you want to do is to cut out the batting so that one piece is about the same size as the multi-wavelength view on the top, and one piece is about the same size as the small ALMA view. Then you want to make 2 bracelets. I like the floral wire because it kind of is stiff, but you could use string too. Make one small bracelet the size of the Hubble image and the larger one the size of the multi-wavelength view. And then the shelf liner, you want to cut out basically 2 donut shapes. One will fit over the Chandra view, one will fit over the multi-wavelength view. So you want to invite the visitors to come and explain that ALMA is kind of, radio emission, Hubble is visible emission, Chandra is X-ray emission. So we will use the batting to represent radio, the small bracelet to represent visible, and the shelf liner to represent X-ray, and have them place these small items on top of the small pictures, and then using the remaining materials, ask them how they would make a multi-wavelength view on the top. So there should be the three pieces left, so they can understand what a multi-wavelength view is, that it is a combination of the different wavelengths. Okay, now let's see.
I love how astronomy allows us to see things we wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's right, things that are not visible to human eyes. Good light, good night is about light pollution. And 2 of the materials that come in this activity are a flashlight and a plastic cap. Now, we can make modifications for low vision by holding the flashlight against a wall. The flashlight represents a street light. And when the flashlight is on, it's like the street light shining up into the night sky. It's an unshielded light. But if we place the plastic cap on top of the flashlight, we are now shielding the light and redirecting the light down to street level so that we don't have light trespass up into the sky, but we have light exactly where it's needed at the street.
Noreen, this is a great example of what Ken was talking about earlier, about having different types of vision impairments. That one's specifically really important for those with low vision, and it creates the higher contrast. I love that.
Yes, and I think the higher contrast is good for everybody. It helps get that the concept down to exactly what it is we're doing with that activity. Now, the dark sky wheels, on the description of this activity, there is a picture of the inner sky wheel. The sky wheel is kind of like a pizza tray, or a pie cut into 6 different wedges. And there's a Orion constellation and Scorpius. And so each wedge has a different amount of stars, and it relates to how much light pollution is blocking some of the dimmer stars. So the bright stars are visible with a lot of light pollution. You can just see the bright stars, but those dimmer stars are not visible when there's more light pollution. So this is another case of modified activity. The original toolkit's dark sky wheels are in the lower part of this picture. But what I've done is gone to the office store and enlarged them to 11 by 17 and laminated the cover and the inner star wheel. So the star wheels connect with a brass fastener, And the cover has an opening that is also a pie wedge. So as you rotate it, you see one piece of the inner wheel. So people can rotate it and notice how as the light pollution increases, the amount of stars decrease that are visible. So there's a direct connection there. Legends in the Sky is really a culminating activity that brings in the concepts from Good Light, Good Night and the Dark Sky Wheel. And there is a picture, there's a photograph of Orion and Scorpius. So those are the same two constellations that are in the Dark Sky Wheel. Now, part of this activity is to create your own constellation. So there are templates for Orion and Scorpius, and people can connect the dots, or they can create, their own picture and come up with a nice story about it. And so that's kind of nice, combining creative writing and creative art. What I like is there's also these cards that are in there, the Legends of the Sky cards. And if you have 3 different size brass fasteners, and what I mean is different size of the heads, not so much the length, but the head of the brass fasteners, what you can do is put very small brass fasteners into very dim stars, very big brass fasteners into the brightest stars, and the rest become the medium ones. So you can feel which stars are brighter and which are not in the different constellations. So I focused in on the Big and Little Dipper cards, the Orion card, and the Scorpius card. Now, I think if you put them in a sandwich bag, and actually quart size works really well, just trim the corners so it's rounded on the corners, and they'll slip right into the bags, and people can touch the stars. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you have it completed. And it's also good for, sanitizing too, so people aren't touching the cards directly. You can just wipe it down. Now, the fun thing is you can actually add in one more activity, and that is light pollution. So while you're at the sewing store getting batting to make your Color of the Cosmos Supernova 1987A model, get 6 different samples of different thicknesses. So something that's really thick, or all the way down to something that's really thin, and cut about a 4 by 6 inch piece and put one sample in each bag. So first have people touch the stars with those cards in the bags. Then you want to have them line up the bags with the samples. Those are going to be your light pollution simulation bags. And one by one, have them place the bags on top of the star patterns, and they can say, wow, seems I can't feel so many. I can't detect too many stars. That's a lot of light pollution. Or, oh, I can detect them all. That's not very much light pollution. So you can, encourage people to think about light pollution and the stars, and then ask them, what could they do where they live to maybe reduce light pollution, and where do they think would be a really good place to observe the night sky? And then that brings it right back to the big astronomy observatories and why it's so important to be observing from rural areas. So these are some ideas that people can use. They're very inexpensive things that people can get. And so I've also put my website on here to get other ideas, www.youcandoastronomy.com. And this is what I think. I think well, people have a good time doing these.
Thank you so much, Noreen. It was really fun to see those adaptations because, as both you and Ken have been emphasizing throughout this whole conversation today, all of these adaptations not only help people who are blind and low vision to learn, but people who just learn better when they have something tactile, or people who have different learning styles. Really making our education accessible helps so many people, I think. So I really enjoyed learning from you.
And I know a lot of people, like Noreen, were talking about that was like, wow, it's really overwhelming. It's a lot to think about ahead of time to do. But the reality of it is that if you plan ahead, it's not really that overwhelming. But at the same time, if you're caught flat-footed, you can make something pretty quickly. If you just have a piece of paper and some tracing wheels and either a hard mat and a piece of corkboard that you can get at your local craft store. And anything tactile is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of people leaving comments saying that they enjoy seeing this. And I just, so I have a spoken reminder too. We have the links in our Zoom webinar chat as well, and I've also put them on our Facebook. But the write-up for specific to the Big Astronomy activities is on the website, bigastronomy.org, on the informal activities page, and that we've put in the chat in both places, and Vivian's just done it again. And we also had someone ask for the resources that Ken had shared about universal design for learning, and I've put the link to the video that Ken shared in the Facebook chat as well. And we have the PDF here in the chat. I can upload it again. I'll go ahead and do that so that it's right down here at the bottom, so you don't have to scroll up. But now I think that we'd love to answer our attendees' questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments on either Facebook or in Zoom. And we'll be happy to try to answer your questions. I know while we're waiting for a few questions to come in, that one question I haven't asked yet that I wanted to ask was your path to your career today. We like to ask that in all of our Big Astronomy programs. So let's start with you, Noreen. How did you get started working in your career in astronomy education? Like, what inspired you to go down this path?
When I was growing up, I loved Star Trek. I loved Star Trek, and it got me thinking about outer space and looking up. And then in the third grade, my teacher introduced me to a book called The Golden Guide to Stars, which I thought was amazing. And then we took a field trip to the Boston Museum of Science, to the Charles Hayden Planetarium. And I was so amazed. I could not believe what was happening. I loved being surrounded by stars. I loved hearing that, that kind voice in the darkness explaining how to find the planets and the stars. I thought only very important people could work in a planetarium, not a person like me. But then some years later, there I was in that same planetarium, sharing the night sky that I love with others. So that's how I got started in astronomy education.
That's lovely. Only very important people like you. Ken, how about you? What was your inspiration for the career path that you're on today? What got you started?
Well, what got me started was just general interest, like Noreen, in astronomy, and then met a professor at the Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania who actually showed me some tactile astronomy stuff that he had done for his classes, and that really got me involved. And then, like I stated earlier, I had to do an independent study for my teaching certificate, and found out that there wasn't a gold standard throughout the world with tactile astronomy. And that was kind of eye-opening to me. So that's kind of why I've been involved in creating tactile astronomy and trying to help those who know nothing about it know how to make it, and what some good standards are, and as well as anything that you can do to make your planetarium shows or classroom activities more accessible for everybody is easier. So that's kind of what got me involved.
Thank you both. We have a question here from Lauren. She says, how do you talk about the different wavelengths of light and what humans can see in the most appropriate way when you are talking to a low vision or blind person who maybe can't see any wavelengths of light? So what's an appropriate way to be sensitive, I think, to that while discussing how we do observe astronomy in different wavelengths?
I guess to show it, if you're talking, sorry, Noreen, I guess if you're talking about total blindness, it would be a tactile way. And, just say, hey, you can see it this way. They're not going to be offended if you're using C or anything like that, because that's just a normal term of speech, right? So, you could say, hey, if you can see that the wavelength has changed by feeling, this bracket here is larger, so that means there's more light we're able to see. It's throwing off more light. It's closer to us, where this bump or this fastener is smaller, so it feels smaller. There we're getting a lot less light coming to us and we can't see as much light.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would say, well, I guess if it was me, I would first explain what wavelength was, and I would maybe have a slinky or something like that to explain things that have larger wavelengths, and so that people can feel from peak to peak, and how that changes whether you're talking about, radio, gamma, X-ray, ultraviolet, infrared, visible, and how visible is really such a small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And I'd also say, you might be familiar with changes in wavelength, but maybe you didn't realize it. For example, have you heard a car passing by, and there's the Doppler effect. And so you've got a change in wavelength that you've probably always heard your whole life, but you didn't realize that's what it was.
And kind of also going back onto that, what is their knowledge base? Do you have to do a lot of pre-teaching, or can you just say, okay, here's the light that we're seeing? And that'd be a good thing to know.
Well, I don't see any other questions come in. There is still time, so if you have a question and we haven't gotten it answered for you, please leave them in the chat windows that we have. And a reminder that you can find these resources at bigastronomy.org, and we've put them in the chat here in the Zoom window. But this project, Big Astronomy, is funded by the National Science Foundation, and it is a research project. So I'd like to ask Dr. Jessica Trucks to tell us a little bit about how you can contribute to the research that's being done.
Hi, everyone. So we are conducting educational research surrounding this project, and we'd really love your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And one way you can help us out is in the chat and in the comments on Facebook. There will be a survey link. If you fill out that survey, you'll be entered to win a $10 gift card to Amazon. And during that survey, if you want to talk with us a little bit more, you can opt in to speak with us 2 times over the next few months to talk about your experience with Big Astronomy. And then afterwards, you'll receive a $40 gift card to Amazon. So those will be popping into the comments in the chat shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And I think we have time for one more question. So we have a question from Rachel. She wants to know what our thoughts are on astronomy sonification.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that astronomy sonification, it's another tool. I think that having a lot of tools can really help people, put together concepts and ideas in their mind. And so astronomy sonification has been corresponding tones or pitches to different brightnesses or different textures. And so actually there's some NASA sites where you can listen to astronomy sonification, even if you just Google astronomy sonification and, see for yourself. But I like the idea that there's more tools. I think that the more the better, and then it gets more people interested in learning.
Yeah, astronomy sonification is great. It's an awesome tool. I personally like it. It doesn't take much to learn. However, if you're looking to use it in a big setting or use it for a lot of research, it is something that you need a little bit of training to do prior to that.
Well, that's another tool to share with your audiences then. Vivian's putting a link in the chat right now about how you can get started with sonification, but I know that it is something that there's a lot of interest in, and it's sort of in a developing area in astronomy education right now.
Well, and what's the nice thing about it too, Renee, is that it's not limited to sight. So whether you have a visual impairment or not, you can use sonification.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to just close us out today by saying thank you so much for all the people who joined us. We had a great audience here in Zoom and also watching us on Facebook Live. And we hope that these adaptations that we've shared today could be helpful to you, not only if you're using the exact activities that Big Astronomy offers, but perhaps it gave you some ideas for activities you already do in your schools or in your museums or in your planetariums, and how you might be able to adapt them to be useful to people with different learning styles and maybe who are blind or visually impaired. I'd like to give a big round of applause to our panel discussion guests, Noreen Grice and Ken Quinn, and as always, Vivian White from the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. Thank you all for being here and sharing your knowledge with us today. I know I learned a lot. And please join us at bigastronomy.org or follow us on social media if you'd like to learn more about the Big Astronomy program. But I'll go ahead and sign off. Click on the links for how you can fill out that survey. It helps us out. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.